about 3 weeks ago, a friend of mine from when we were in grade school together, she posted a picture on Instagram. And when I looked at that picture, I actually started crying. That picture was a little few sentences that I wrote when I was in 3rd grade. It said, "I want to be a painter so I can express myself through my paintings. I want to be able to paint wide oceans that goes as far as my sight can see. I want to be able to paint forests that are filled with lavishing trees and colorful scented flowers." It reminded me of the great expectations that I had for myself only when I was just a little girl. So I sat back and I thought, this is actually a great theme that I can present. Now, every kid, when they're drawing a picture, they like to, when they're frustrated, they throw it in the garbage. Every artist does that too. Sometimes they just paint over it. And I wasn't far from it. I used to do the same thing. But luckily, I had a mom who saw potential in me since I was a little girl. And anything that I couldn't get my hands on, she would put it away in a nice folder. So I went back to this folder, and I looked back at every little single drawing that I did. Each part had a phase. My name is Safiya, and I'm going to walk you through my art. Now, I was born in a hospital, and I lived there for 3 years. And during this time, people come and go. And it's always happy faces, sad faces. It's always faces. These faces created characters in my head. So I started with a circle. And I said, no, it doesn't look like a face. And then another circle. Still didn't look like a face. So I got frustrated. I threw it away. I started looking at people like eggs. Then I started making oval shapes. And still I felt it didn't look like people. So I moved on. Now, for every child, they must have used crayons in their life, right? So I'm sitting there at the back of the classroom. In all my years, I always loved sitting at the back of the classroom. The teacher's yapping away, and I'm not always concentrating. I'm sitting there drawing. And so I just gather all these colors. I didn't have the image of bicycle in my mind. I just created lines, and slowly a bicycle appeared. And in every art class, there's always something different to do. So I walk in and I see this, and I see the teacher, she's taking all the papers and putting it in water, and she's like, create something. So I was thinking, what am I going to create? And it's all damped with water. So I took blobs of paint and a little marble, and I put it on the paper and started blowing it around until I created this. But I thought, okay, I like the patterns, I love the colors, but it's giving me a headache all the time blowing the marbles. So I created the same thing, only I took the paints and put it on my hand and created my own style. It was, in art, you always have to do papers and scissors, and you have to make something. I hated papers and scissors. Kids would take 5 minutes to just cut something, take the glue, and paste it on the paper. And I would sit there and I'm thinking, what am I going to create? I can't even cut a straight line. So I'd wait for all the students to finish cutting, and whatever their scraps they had left on the ground, I'd pick it up and start pasting. And my teacher's like, why don't you create something, something that's related to your culture or heritage? So I was like, what am I going to create? I can't cut. So I put all these scrap papers that were left, and I created a scenery of mosques and, palm trees. Now, by the age of 5th grade, I wanted to participate in anything that I could in school. And sadly, I wasn't allowed to. Everything, if I wanted to participate in dance or in singing, I always was asked to stay behind. And they told me, don't, because, other children would be scared of you. or something as swimming. I would practice on every single day. But when it was time for me to compete with other schools, I was representing our school as the second top. They told me don't, because people won't compete with you. So I'd go home. Every girl has had a Barbie doll, right? So I take these Barbie dolls, and I felt because they're related more to humans, I use them as my models. And one of these Barbie dolls represent me. So I created the same scenario at home. And so during this phase, most of my drawings were like this, creating me dancing, me posing, me being an artist. I moved on from this phase because I felt like people were judgmental. I started creating a wall for myself. I feared people a lot and, their constant judgment. So I moved on to landscapes and sceneries, and for over maybe 3 or 4 years, that's all what I did. It's easier to be someone else, but the great success is being yourself. In my early teenage years, I would always look at myself in the mirror and ask myself, why me? Why am I born this way? Why me? Why was I chosen? And it was difficult because every time I looked at myself in the mirror and I walk into school, I would always be the one who sticks out. And every teenager likes shopping and clothes and looking good, just trying to fit in. So when I would shop, I couldn't always find something that, fits me, because whether the sleeves were too long or I can't wear it because I'm wearing a pastisas, for the shoes. So I started creating my own fashion. I would sit there in front of, the fashion TV or flip magazines and create my own style. And if you notice, I never put hands or sometimes 1 feet. All my images always represented me, a mirror of myself. Moving on from the stage, I wanted to try something a little bit more challenging. I always looked for something challenging. So I moved on into henna art. And I always would ask my mother, can you just put your hand on the paper so I can trace it? And she'd wonder why. And I would sit there just creating art designs of henna one after another. Then I thought, okay, hands, I don't like hands. It's not me. So I moved these designs into potteries. And slowly I phased out of it. There was always, when I go back home, go to bed, I just want to give up. I don't want to wake up anymore. I went back to my comfort zone, landscapes. Now, beginning of high school, again, we had a teacher who just loved abstract and paper cutting. And I felt, oh boy, here we go again, back to the same bump. So she would tell me, create an abstract. And I was like, I don't understand what abstract means. She's like, just take any object and turn it around 100 times. I said, okay. So I took, in front of me was a cup with a lot of pens. And I kept, taking pictures of it and then trying to put it all together and create, an abstract. And then when it came to paper and cutting, again, I took the leftover scraps from my friends around me and I created a scene of men under a palm tree drinking coffee. Now, in my last year of high school, my teacher encouraged me to take an advanced program, which is college level art. And I had to pick a theme. So I picked Oman because I felt like I could relate it to it, even though I was in an American school. So from that, I tried creating different images, and and then he took my papers and threw it and said, don't be a camera, be yourself, put some touch into it, change the colors, put Safiya into your images. So I started doing that. I created this called Heart of the Desert because I felt every desert has stories and it's in the middle of anything. So I created it with colors of the heart. I graduated from high school and I felt like I still didn't understand the basics of art. So I taught myself. I went through YouTubes and I started creating, the sketches, black and white. What does light mean? What does color mean? What is the contrast? Where the object should be? And this is just sketches after sketches after sketches. Until I came and thought, there is one medium I haven't tried, which is oil. Every artist has tried oil except me. I want to be an artist, so why shouldn't I try oil? So I bought oil colors, I got a canvas, I painted quickly, and I was like, I'm done. But it's still wet, and it's not done. So I said, I have to learn. So I went under an artist, and I was like, please teach me how to use oil. Even though I'm an artist, my patience are very limited. So it took me almost 2 months to do this one. And then, as I was flipping the pages, I remembered that I hate drawing hands. So I told myself, this is a time where you need to learn how to do hands. So I started sketching and sketching and sketching. And it took me 3 months to do this one. And the reason why I chose this is because a fisherman's hands has so many stories and so many lines and so many challenges. And I felt each line represents me. It represents everything that I have faced. I moved on and I went to Jordan. And during that time in Jordan, I also was studying under an artist, but I was also taking animation. And I managed also to collect about 30 pieces of artwork and had my first solo exhibition. Again, these are all oils as well. I came back to Oman and I still had the idea of henna. I wanted, to try something Islamic. So, first of all, I used English letters and I felt like it was very graffiti and I was trying to have my own style. So I started taking Arabic letters and designing on them. And still, I wasn't confident about it. So I started creating names of the 99 names of God and I started, designing on them. Moving from that, I had an opportunity to go to Tanzania for New Year's. And I had the sketchbook in my hand with a pen, and I saw all these artists constantly drawing, and they had like these streets full of art. And with my sketchbook, I'm trying there like 2 minutes to finish something, and the guy walks away. I'm like, wait, I didn't finish. So I told myself, this is a challenge I need to do. Because I'm slow in art, I gotta be quick. So I kept trying and trying. And when I came back to Oman, every afternoon, that's all I did was sit in the patio with my tea, and whatever comes by really quickly, I try to sketch it. Now, I came across a Omani fashion designer who was looking for an artist, and she was like, "Let's put together in the theme of our ruler, His Majesty Sultan Qaboos." And what we did was, she created 20 lines of dresses, while I created 40 art pieces. And because it was fashion, I wanted to focus more on the designs of clothes. So instead of just drawing and painting, I tried to be a little bit more creative. Our dresses are mostly flowery and blingy a bit. So from every region I had in Oman, I just picked 4, and I took the imprints. Like on the left, it was the inside of Amman, which is Dakhiliya, and I tried to take the forts using that as imprint on the painting. And from our capital, Muscat, I took His Majesty's palace. And moving on to the south, I took the flowers, the frankincense tree, as a pattern. And on the very far right, I took the fisherman's net to create a texture. I felt, putting acrylics or oil on canvas wasn't still creative. I wanted to take, actual material to have that feel for it. So then I started collecting guys wear these long tussles on their traditional clothes. So I started taking all the tussles and started stitching it. onto the canvas, and more on the Omani tassels of women's scarves. This is our traditional painting clothing line, so I tried to make it to have a feel for it. And then I tried to get a little bit creative out. I guess this is called abstract, using the veil, and the lines of the veil is part of the smoke of the frankincense. Now, a quick story. Early last year, a friend of mine came walking into our house one day, and he said, "Safiya, you need to try the iPad." And I'm looking at him, more technology? He says, "No, no, 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 just try the iPad. It has all these fantastic applications that you can use." And I'm thinking, no. And he's like, "Okay, I'll play a bet with you. If your mother, who my mom doesn't always like using technology, it's very hard to convince her. He said, if I get your mom to buy the iPad, would you buy one?" I was like, okay, he's not gonna convince her. Okay, yeah, I'll play the bet. However, he convinced her. But he kept coming over and over again. And he would open these art applications and he'd go to the bathroom taking a long time. I knew he'd do it deliberately so I can touch the applications. And so I touched it and I got addicted. And every half an hour I kept sending him all these artworks. And he's like, "Enough, my phone's gonna explode." He showed it to the company he was working with, and I managed to participate in a festival where I would sit there drawing on the iPad with a big screen behind me, creating images. Now, coming back to Oman, I was job hunting, and I felt like no one was accepting me. Every time I'd send my portfolio through online and they'd tell me, "Come and have a job interview," they'd look at me and they're like, "You're the same person?" I'm like, "Yes." And they go blank. So I decided, it's time for me to advocate. So I collected over 2 years about 70 pieces, and I had my second solo exhibition. After that, during this 2 years where I collected my second solo, I tried to show the different areas that I grew in. After having this show, everybody was like, "Oh, Safiya, the physically challenged lady. Have you seen her art?" I don't like that title. I'm not just a physically challenged lady. I'm an artist. So I decided to have another art exhibition. Only this time I went back to thinking of what the fashion designer and I worked, and I took in more depth, and I created more fashion where I used the Omani men's clothing line, and I actually took hours and hours to stitch on the canvas itself. The blue one is the men's, and the black one is for the women. And I kept just mixing materials and trying to, work something to have a feel for the art. And then I told myself, I was having these nightmares of portraits, and I told myself, you know what, maybe it's time to break that wall and go back to learning how to do portraits. So I started asking my friends and family to send me their pictures. And whenever they would send me, I would try to draw it. And it started with this one. I didn't like it, but I kept it. And then I tried with this one and moved on. And slowly, it started creating a huge buzz on Instagram and Facebook. And I was like, okay, I can actually make this into a business. But it's also practicing for me. So slowly people will start sending their photographs and create more. And I try to make it more looking like a photograph. This doesn't end for me. I turned it into a photograph. I set a limit for myself for 3 years. But slowly now I think, let me challenge myself a little bit more. Let's make it look a little bit more 3D. So that's what I'm working on. I want to be a painter so I can express myself through my paintings. I want to be able to paint wide oceans that go as far as my sight can see. I want to be able to paint forests that are filled with lavishing trees and colorful scented flowers. 20 years, here I am, Safiya Bahlani, that painter, that artist. And I believe if I can do it, anyone can do it. The Great Expectation is not a fantasy. Yes, it is challenging, and challenge should be your weapon. It should be your, whether it's a knife or whatever, to keep you going through all the hard tunnels. It's not impossible. Thank you.